Okay, so today we're going to talk about the experiences that I've had at Harvard as a first generation and low income student. So first I'm going to start talking about what my high school was like, because I think it'll give a little bit more context as to why I feel the way that I did, and also talk about my family background because I think it'll do the same. I am a first generation immigrant. I'm a first generation high school student. I'm a first generation college student, and I grew up speaking Spanish at home. That's my native language. That's my first language. It's the language that I use to communicate with my parents. I went to a Title I school district. A Title I school district is basically a school district where a lot of funding comes from the government. In order to qualify for a Title I label, most of your students have to be on free or reduced lunch. And at my school district, it was 99% of us were on free or reduced lunch.
Title I school districts are assigned that label because at least 40% of the students in that school district are low income. Schools in the United States are funded through a variety of taxes and funds from the state, federal, and local government. If the students of a school have low property values, their family does, then that means that these families are paying less school district property taxes, and so then the schools just have less funds to work with. And so this is why the low income neighborhoods cannot afford to fund their schools properly, and they rely on government funds to fund them. You can see the differences that school district property taxes make just by driving to a rich neighborhood and looking at their high school, and the high school looks like a whole college.
My school district was 98% minority. At my high school in particular, because a lot of our parents didn't go to college, a lot of them didn't speak English, a lot of them were working many jobs at a time and didn't have time to come help their kids out with their homework and help instill a drive to go to college. And because their families might have been struggling to have ends meet and their kids were already working throughout high school, going to college was not something that everyone was super excited or thought that they needed to do in their life. Because of that, the college going culture at my school was almost non-existent, and
I was very frustrated by that.
However, I will say that my high school still gave me a lot of resources, and because of them I was able to take AP exams, and I was able to travel across the country, and I was able to engage in competitions. And I do think I am academically successful because I grew up in a school district like this. I think it gave me a really great sense of independence and learned how to scavenge for resources. I was out there clawing my way through the school. And so now to contrast the environment at my school and the culture there with Harvard, for one, most of the people there have parents who went to high school and went to college. And a lot of students have parents who went to Harvard or went to other schools of similar caliber. And
that was really strange to hear.
To hear that my peers had parents that they could speak English to, that they could talk about their classes to, that they could talk about college things with, that was very
strange to me,
because I didn't have that, and a lot of my peers from back home didn't have that either. That has been a very big shift in culture for me to get used to. In terms of the undergraduate population, about 15% of the students are first generation. The median income at Harvard is $168,000. That is the median income. That's, oh my gosh. 67% of the students there come from the top 20% of earners in the country. the amount of experiences at Harvard, it does not accurately at all represent the experiences of the United States or of the world.
The income of a family does not necessarily tell the whole story of a family's economic situation. A family can make a lot more money on paper, say like 6 figures of income, but can have a lot of student debt, or can have a really high mortgage, or a family can make not a lot of money, but have property values that are really high. And so that also influences a family situation and their ability to afford tuition and their ability to get financial aid. Family income does not tell the whole story, but it can be very revealing.
The reason that the demographic at Harvard is the way that it is because if you have parents who have a college degree, who have a 9-to-5 job, who have a stable job, a well-paying job, who speak English, they can come home and teach their kids about the value of education, and they can help them with their homework, and they can take them out to libraries to rent books and read to them, and hire SAT tutors for them, and hire people to teach them violin and take them to swimming lessons, and they just have a lot more opportunities than people who don't have these resources do. The cycle of poverty and this cycle of, educated people getting more educated, and of course I will say there's absolutely nothing wrong with being born into that privilege.
My point is not to criticize people who have privilege or who are born into privilege. I'm talking about the fact that having systemic privileges for people that allow them an upper hand at life and then keep other people in negative cyclic situations is not okay. This facade of people in the US being able to achieve their dreams equally with like hard work and just like ambition and drive is true only to a certain extent. So yeah, that is my point.
And so now I'm going to talk about some of the most difficult experiences that I've had at Harvard, and I'm going to talk about them in order from the most concrete to the most abstract.
All of these experiences that I had are maybe not the experiences that every first generation low-income student is going to have at Harvard or, at other colleges in the country or in the world. And I also understand that people who are not first generation and low income can have some of the experiences that I've experienced. And I also want to make it clear that a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about are, I think, experiences that first generation and low income students, at any college can relate to, and not just if you go to Harvard.
I had to pack up my entire life. I had to put it all in like 3 suitcases, lug it all to the airport, off the airport, into like a car, across the yard, up into my dorm, unpack everything, and it was just like a very overwhelming thing to do logistically and just like physically. Like, how do I
pull 3-4 suitcases at a time with a backpacker on me and like, it was just a lot.
I did have the help though of a very great friend of mine pulling them up the stairs and taking them into my room. But up until then, I was very overwhelmed with everything. And now emotionally, I was very sad that my parents couldn't come with me. I was meeting a lot of my roommates' parents and my peers' parents, and I was just like, I felt very alone and very sad that I couldn't share this like great experience of starting college and moving in with my parents. Number 2, not being able to speak Spanish daily like I was used to at home has also been very jarring. I feel like a part of my personality has left me, like it's just gone.
O sea, de a tiro que no existe.
Because, when I speak Spanish, when you speak another language, I'm sure you can relate, you feel like a different person. You have a different persona.
Your tone is different.
Your expressions are different. There are certain things that you can't express in a different language, or are just harder to. And not being able to speak it every day has really made me understand how much I relied on Spanish to construct this other part of my identity and how important this part was to me. Of course, I can always you know, be conscious about who I'm making friends with and make sure that they speak Spanish and like make sure that we speak Spanish all day. But sometimes the people that I happen to be friends with just don't speak Spanish, and that's okay. English has become a bigger part of me than Spanish, and I don't like that. And I want to change that. And it's hard to. I was so scared that I was going to be unhappy for 4 years at Harvard. I was thinking that I needed to transfer. I was talking to my dean. I was looking at different schools, and because I was seriously considering it, I was just very scared that I hadn't made the right decision for me because I just didn't know what college was supposed to be like. I didn't have my parents guide me through the college decision process, or anyone else for that matter. I made the decision on my own, and it was very difficult for me to try to figure out what I should value more in a college. Should I care about location? Should I care about culture? Do I care about class offerings? Do I care about what should I be looking for at the end of a college experience?
Does it even matter?
However, of course, I love it now, and I think it's an amazing place with its issues.
Okay, so my relationship with Harvard is not as simple as it's amazing, it has its problems, but I love it. There are other problems with it, administration, you know, there's just a lot to talk about. And I feel a lot of other things that are positive about it, that are negative about it, and it would take me a very long time to explain them and like fully flesh them out. And I think that this is the case for a lot of other students on campus, whatever their background, but I think it is especially something that first generation and low income students feel. They have just like a very complicated relationship with the institution because I think it represents a lot of things like elitism and wealth and, you know, hyper education. But yeah.
I understand that I'm very lucky to even go to Harvard and think about having made a mistake of going there. And I'm very lucky to have had options to decide between. So I understand that. I understand. Back at my high school, everyone there was a minority, everyone there was low income. Most people there had parents who worked a lot more hours, who didn't speak English, who didn't have a college degree, and I didn't stand out in those ways. There were other things that made me, you know, who I was at my district. But moving to Harvard, I suddenly had to think really hard about these things because these things were not something that a lot of people identified with. I had to figure out how I wanted to portray those parts of me. How much of my identity do I want to consist of being first generation and low income? And it's not because I'm ashamed or embarrassed, it's just because I think that there are so many other parts of my identity that could describe me better and could describe me more fully than this label. I was very scared of joining first generation or low income communities and feeling that that was my only identity on campus, and I didn't want that to be the case. I wanted other parts of me to stand out. Even with the making of this video, I didn't know if I should make it, if I should even include like first generation and low income in the title, because I was worried that would reduce my identity to those things. And I ultimately decided that I wanted to share my story and provide hopefully some support to other people more than I cared about controlling this one aspect of my identity publicly. So there has been this like growing rift between me and my family and me and my community back home and me and the way that I grew up. The more educated that I get, like when I started high school, I felt really strange about being more educated than my parents formally. Like, how do you handle that? I didn't know how to handle that. Like, what does that mean? And the more and more educated that I get, I've realized that what it means is that your family and the people that you care about a lot back home will not be able to understand a lot of the experiences that I'm having because they just have never experienced them. They've never been to high school, or they've never been to college, or they don't speak English, and they're missing out on essential parts of the culture. And the more educated that I get and the more entrenched I get into this like world of wealthy, elite, academic, educated things, the more I'm growing apart from who I used to be, or at least I worry, and I worry that I will lose myself. And this rift has made me feel very alone. It has made me feel like I have been going to college like very alone. It feels like I have no connection to my previous life. Every time I get on a plane to Boston, my connections are severed, and I don't know how to stop that from happening. Number 6 is the feelings of guilt that I experience a lot of the time while I'm at Harvard. I have a lot, just like it's almost unfathomable how many resources on campus I have. I have access to like 75 libraries. I have access to like world-class leaders and researchers and teachers, to like athletic facilities.
It's almost paralyzing to have so many resources all at once.
I feel guilty because I know that other people will never be able to access these things simply because they like weren't born to the right family in order to do it, or into the right country, or into the right school district. It's really hard to know that I am enjoying all of these things while a lot of people around the world are not and cannot, and a lot of people close to me cannot. I understand that I have a lot of privilege in just being able to go to Harvard, and I understand that education and privilege comes with a lot of power, and I think a lot about what it means for me to have that, and what it means for me to go from someone who came from a family that was not formally educated to being someone who might eventually get her doctorate degree. Like, that is a very big shift that I don't know really how to navigate the privileges of that, and I worry that I owe a lot to my community. In all of my thoughts about this, I have come to 2 conclusions. One is that I should put myself first and worry about my happiness and my mental health and my goals and what I want to do with my life, and then second, worry about giving back to others and think about how my home community fits into that and how the greater world fits into that. And the second thing that I've come to realize is that a lot of people never even feel this like immense connection and just like immense pressure to give back to their home community that is really disadvantaged, you know, and that they feel a lot of pressure to give back to them because they're the ones who have made it out and, you know, are now receiving a college education and a good paying job. And, you know, there are some people that don't think about that pressure of having to give back to their disadvantaged home community and can just kind of make a career decision based on their own goals and aspirations without having to calculate how their home community will fit into that path. I don't say that bitterly. I say that as just something that I've come to realize. And with that discussion about privilege, I'll end it with saying that I understand that all of these issues that I've brought up and all of these thoughts and emotions that I've brought up are only possible because I'm very privileged and had the opportunity to go to high school and have loving, encouraging parents who gave me a really healthy home. But by sharing some of these thoughts and emotions and experiences that I've had, I hope that I am reaching some people who have had very similar experiences to mine and feel alone. I hope that I have made you feel a little bit less alone.